Damien Chazelle is an inspiration for young filmmakers, and since 2014, after he made Whiplash, he is almost a household name. Especially to younger people, with films such as La La Land and First Man, which have all been widely recognised as fantastic movies. But what I want to do is delve into the mind of Damien Chazelle and ask the question of why he is such an inspiration. So first of all, I think it comes down to the fact that he is so young. Whiplash was made when I believe he was only 29. That was released, the full film, not the short film. And it just goes to show that you don't have to be an older person to be able to get into an industry like this. So as a young filmmaker, he had lots of ideas of what he wanted to do. And his first idea for a feature film was La La Land. However, it's not something you can just make overnight. He had to make himself a reputation. So his first short film, Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench, is very similar to La La Land. It's just a little short film, and well, it's quite long actually, but if you watch it, you'll see the inspiration that was there that then created La La Land. He's very, very musically inclined, and that's one of his strong points, definitely, his use of music in film, and you notice that straight away with Guy and Madeline. So he wanted to create La La Land, but in the process of writing the script and coming up with the ideas for it, he found that he was fixed on telling this story that was very personal to him, which was the story of Whiplash. And this story was following his experiences as learning to be a drummer, and how he felt that affected him and affected what he has done since. He found it to be a very stressful time in his life. He said that he found it very tough. It was a very tough time for him, and he wanted to recreate the stress that he went through while trying to learn to be a drummer. So he came up with Whiplash, and he miraculously managed to get the short film done. And in the short film, we have J.K. Simmons, as well as in the normal film, but Johnny Simmons, no relation to J.K. Simmons, Johnny Simmons played Andrew Neiman rather than Miles Teller, and he did a very good job. But I think the thing that made Whiplash so amazing was their choice of casting with Miles Teller. So with that all kind of summary of where he started, we're going to take a look at his films themselves and what he does so amazingly. And I think, as I mentioned before, his inclination to use music so cleverly is definitely a strong point. His editing skills are just amazing. Whiplash is definitely the greatest edited film of the 2010s. I can't think of a film that has better editing than Whiplash does. And also his vision in storytelling and how he writes. And what I'm gonna pick on mainly in this video is how important writing is, especially when it comes to someone such as him. Now, he made the script for Whiplash back in the early 2010s, and it got put on the blacklist. And if you don't know what blacklist is, it's a sort of Hollywood company that every year they get a bunch of scripts that haven't been made into films yet, and they put them on this list to show their potential, that they need to be made into a film. And I don't think there's a single film that's ever been put on the blacklist that hasn't been made. It gets made, always, very quickly after it's put on the blacklist, usually 2 or 3 years at the longest. But even though that was put onto the blacklist, he decided that he wanted to make the film for himself, and he could represent his vision properly by doing it that way. Through backing and through his contacts, working in the industry previously, he managed to get this film started. And the focus of Whiplash mainly lies between two characters, and Damien Chazelle makes his films based around two characters. In Whiplash, it's between student and teacher, between Andrew and Fletcher, who is his jazz teacher, and their relationship as very different people, and how one pushes the other to become great, but how their dynamic together is what creates the film. Now, we see this again later on in La La Land, where we have two characters. We have Emma Stone's character and we have Ryan Gosling's, but they are not student-teacher, not a different relationship than we usually see. They are just love interests for each other. And I think that makes the story less interesting than the dynamics such as student and teacher, but obviously the story works in that way for La La Land. And then in First Man we have mainly the connection between Ryan Gosling's character, Neil Armstrong, and Claire Foy's character of his wife. And First Man is definitely his worst film. I didn't even watch it all the way through. I had to skip through it because of how little I actually liked the film, which is a real shame because Whiplash is a film I could probably watch every other day and never get bored. Meanwhile, First Man I can't even bring myself to attempt to rewatch. But after very little research, I discovered that First Man was not written by Damien Chazelle, unlike Whiplash and La La Land. So I think that was where he first fell short, because his talent lies within his writing, and his writing reflects his style of directing and what he can create. And basing it off a true story as well for First Man, Neil Armstrong was a real man with real problems and a real life. You can't just create out of thin air what his story was, and that's a very difficult task to recreate something that really happened. So that's why Whiplash and La La Land are his better films. Both of them were nominated for Best Picture, rightfully so. They are both fantastic movies, and I love Whiplash. I think it was the greatest film of the 2010s. But I understand why it lost, because Birdman is another one of my favourite films of the 2010s. 2014 was a really tough year. Fantastic movies that were all nominated. Amazing films came out that year. They really did. So where Damien's strength lies is the fact that he is so young and he has so much potential. He's only in his 30s now. And if he keeps making these stories, keeps writing, I think some of the stories that he'll be able to tell, if he can tell them in the same ways that he told Whiplash and he told La La Land, then he can have even more amazing hits that are just fantastic when it comes to the medium of film. What I find about him that is so inspirational is the fact that he wanted to tell his own story. Not his story of his life, but a part of his life. And it kind of shows that for younger people, if there is a story that you want to tell within the medium of film, if you have the potential to create it, it can be great if you just tell the story and if you're clever with how you tell it. Whiplash is beautiful. I've never in my life even thought twice about drumming or jazz. It's something I couldn't care less about. And yet, I love that film so much. So he is just an amazing filmmaker and really kind of is paving the way to show younger people that these stories can be made and these amazing films can be produced. So now I just want to talk about Whiplash itself. And I love Whiplash even more than La La Land. I think La La Land's great, but after watching Whiplash, you can't help feel that La La Land doesn't even come close to the greatness of Whiplash, which is a real shame. And Whiplash, the beauty of it lies, as I said before, between the two characters, Miles Tellers and J.K. Simmons. And J.K. Simmons' acting is a cut above most celebrities. It is amazing, and this film is by far his greatest. And these dynamics between these characters, there's a constant back and forth, and I don't want to spoil the film for people that haven't seen it, because you need to watch this film. But the atmosphere that is created in such a small, sort of contained environment of this school Schaefer, which is based off of Juilliard, and just the development of Andrew and how much he has to push himself to be what he thinks is expected of him. And another interesting plot of Whiplash is the fact that he also has another two characters that are very important to Andrew, and that is his father and his love interest. However, in a very clever twist, his love interest is thrown out the window halfway through the film, which I think is fantastic, and it shows the dedication of these characters, and it's something you don't usually see, or how his dad just has to stick by him, and Andrew is, always pushing, and he wants to make his father proud, but above all, he wants to make himself proud, and he wants to be the best. Such a smart film, such clever storytelling, and the editing is so smooth, and the ending of the film is poetic in how it brings everything together in these last 15 minutes. Just the last few shots just sum up how this story has ended. So clever, barely any words need to be said during this film, because the film itself is told through the music, through the shots, and just outstanding. So finally, Damien Chazelle needs to be appraised more. He's just absolutely fantastic when it comes to writing, directing, everything. And he is a real inspiration for young filmmakers. He has a real talent, and I think he's someone that needs to be watched to just show that you don't need millions of years of experience. You just need to have a good idea and tell it.